Hello and welcome to the news on NT International. I'm Chiwobi Walter Naji. Let's start with the headlines. World marks No Tobacco Day. WHO sustains advocacy to empower younger adults in the fight against smoking and COVID-19. 5 years on, Nigeria milestone in fight against corruption and promotion of transparency in focus. And mosques in Saudi Arabia reopen. Worshippers ordered to follow strict guidelines to prevent spread of coronavirus. And now the news. Today's World No Tobacco Day. The day provides a counter-marketing campaign and empowers young people to engage in the fight against big tobacco. The global campaign debunks the myths and exposes devious tactics employed by tobacco industries. It also provides young people with the knowledge required to easily detect industry manipulation and equip them with the tools to rebuff such tactics, thereby empowering young people to stand up against them. Now, this is especially important right now as studies show that smokers have a higher risk for severe cases of coronavirus. World Health Organization calls on all young people to join the fight to become a tobacco-free generation. It says the world cannot afford another generation being influenced by tobacco industries under the guise of promoting freedom of personal choice while freely profiting from the ploy. And joining me now in the studio is the public health physician, Dr. Tolu Fakeye. Dr. Fakeye is the president, FCT chapter of the Society for Public Health Professionals of Nigeria. He's also former director, health planning, research and statistics in the Federal Ministry of Health. Many thanks for being with us.
Thank you very much. Good evening, viewers.
All right, so in line with the World Health Organization's position to build a capacity of the young adults not to fall prey to the deception of tobacco companies, how best can Nigeria key in?
Well, the most important thing is for young people to be aware of the gimmicks of tobacco companies to entice them into smoking. And for them to be aware also that smoking is associated with addiction, that is, continual desire to feel high, so to speak, and to be intoxicated with the feeling they get from smoking. But they must be aware further that smoking leads to very, very serious health issues. Smoking is a cause of severe illness and death. And around the world, every year, about 8 million people die as a consequence of smoking. And in a country like ours, where we have a large segment of youth population, our young people should be very much aware that it's better to avoid starting to smoke and getting into the habit than to try to leave smoking later on, in order to make sure that they avoid those health risks and consequences of smoking.
Okay, so we understand, the fact that most of these tobacco companies, employ a lot of gimmicks to get people to buy their products. But without enabling extant laws, and lack of social mobilization, can this work?
Well, in Nigeria, after many years of effort, there's a law, what we call the Nigerian Tobacco Control Act 2015. But the problem, the more important aspect, is the enforcement of the provisions of that law. In fact, just last year, the Nigerian Tobacco Control Regulations an ancillary to the law was also passed, but enforcement has practically not commenced. And what do we mean by enforcement? Even tiny aspects of the enforcement, like banning the sale of tobacco products to minors, is not being enforced. Like banning the sale of cigarettes as single sticks, okay? Because this is what young people can afford to buy from the market. That also is not being enforced, okay? So we have various aspects like that that require enforcement, but they are not being enforced. So the correct position is that there's a law, there's even an ancillary body of regulations, but enforcement is weak so far.
All right, so we understand, some of those things. But what do you make of smoking and coronavirus?
Well, this is a very, very important one to tackle and to further use to encourage our people to avoid smoking. Before the advent of coronavirus, it was well known that smoking caused illness in the body, mainly in the respiratory system. Although some complications also lead to other organs in the body. But the main pathology is in the respiratory system. And smokers had impaired lung functions, okay, compared with non-smokers.
Okay.
We now know also it's important to state some other reasons. Secondly, smoking causes high risk for development of diseases like diabetes, like cancers, which now with the advent of coronavirus, we now regard as underlying diseases, which make the infection of coronavirus more severe in smokers more than non-smokers. And thirdly, very importantly also, smoking on its own causes depression of the immune system in the body.
Okay, Dr. Fake, just very quickly, in less than 1 minute, besides the health challenges, the consumption of tobacco of all forms can cause, a lot of persons see it from a human angle perspective. Does this suffice?
Well, there's an entanglement of what you may call interests and rights in relation to smoking. Interests of tobacco companies, you've heard a bit about that. They want to make money, okay, out of production and sale of tobacco products. But they also have strong influence with government to hamper and kind of tie the hands of government back in forcing them and making people stop smoking. In the terms of, they claim that they are employers of labor, okay? They also claim that they empower farmers who grow tobacco, so they want to say that they are also responsible corporate citizens by promoting advertisement, promoting sports, promoting music festivals and things like that.
Okay, thank you very much, Doctor. Unfortunately, we really appreciate you for coming. We'll have to cut you short at this moment because of time. We thank you very much for being part of the news tonight.
Thanks very much for inviting me.
All right, I've been speaking with Dr. Fake. He's the president of FCT chapter of the Public Health Professionals, Society for Public Health Professionals. Moving on now, President Muhammadu Buhari engaged members of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 and further measures of containing the pandemic as 2 weeks extension of the ease of lockdown ends Monday. Chairman of the task force and secretary to the government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, led the members to the meeting where feelers emerged that more segments of the economy may be reopened as the battle against the uncommon health challenge rages on. State House correspondent Adamu Sambo reports.
Members of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 were in the State House to submit their 4th interim report as the nation intensifies efforts at controlling and containing the coronavirus pandemic. At the interactive engagement, President Muhammadu Buhari and the PTF delegation appraised the progress achieved in the last 2 weeks, challenges encountered, as well as available options on the best way forward.
As far as the work of the PTF is concerned. He was upfront with his commendation, and he assured us that the nation is fully behind us in the work that he has charged us to do. And he is also appreciative of the work of the frontline workers. And we also discussed the issues of compliance. And he said we should continue to appeal to Nigerians and drive home the point that it is a personal responsibility.
Is Nigeria winning this fight against COVID-19?
We are winning. We are winning. As a matter of fact, you just suppose the rate of cases with our fatality rates, which is basically about 3%. Other countries and other climes is over 10%. We've not reached the peak yet. And I wouldn't want to fool Nigerians by telling them that we are out of the woods. No, we are not out of the woods. As we even open up and accommodate more enterprises, because we are trying to have a balance between livelihoods and lives. There's a likelihood of the increase in cases, but that should not be a source of despair.
Although Nigeria now has close to 10,000 confirmed cases of COVID-19 and nearly 300 fatalities, some states are yet to be in tune with the reality of the situation. Apart from failing to cooperate with the NCDC as regards the containment drive, worship centers have also been reopened, by some of them contrary to the social distancing protocol.
That's part of what we have considered in its totality. I would await Mr. President's decision on that once I receive his approval going forward as to certain recommendations that we have put in place. But I can assure you about one thing, that the ownership of the next phase will be the responsibility of the states under national supervision and coordination. And it is very, very important we realize that no state can be an island unto itself. When you deal with public health matters, whatever happens in a particular locality has the consequences of spilling off to other constituencies. And that is the message that we continue to drive in our pursuit of getting everybody to be on board.
As the 2 weeks extension of the ease of COVID-19 lockdown ends on Monday, indications are that most segments of the nation's economy will be reopened.
After we receive Mr. President's approval tonight or tomorrow morning, we will now know which segment of the economy he has allowed to open.
Nigeria recorded her first index case of coronavirus on February 27, 2020. And since then, President Muhammadu Buhari, who is the champion of COVID-19 in West Africa and adjudged a role model for other nations by the World Health Organization, had addressed the nation 3 times. From the State House, Adamu Sambo, NTA News.
All right, it's now time to go over to global update on COVID-19 as the total number of coronavirus in the world stands at 60.98 million on Sunday evening, and that's according to Johns Hopkins University. India Sunday is now the 8th most affected country in the world, according to the Johns Hopkins University tracker. According to the tracker, India has 1.84 million cases. However, its Ministry of Health and Family Welfare said India's tally stood at 1.82 million infections after a record daily jump of 8,380 new coronavirus cases. Tens of thousands of mosques across Saudi Arabia reopened Sunday for the first time in more than 2 months, with worshippers ordered to follow strict guidelines to prevent the spread of the coronavirus, as Islam's holiest site in Mecca remained closed to the public. The Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem, Islam's holiest site outside of Saudi Arabia, also reopened for prayers for the first time since it closed in mid-March, with little regards for social distancing. Throngs of faithful waited outside the holy site's gate before it opened early hours of Sunday, with many wearing face masks. Entry was only permissible on submission for temperature check. Iran's COVID-19 tally exceeds 150,000. Toll nears 7,800, just as Jerusalem's Al-Aqsa Mosque reopens after 2 months. Travel in and out of Abu Dhabi as well as within the Emirates region will be banned for a week starting Tuesday to prevent the spread of COVID-19. Britain reaches its 200,000 capacity testing target for coronavirus, including the means for 40,000 antibody tests a day, the government said on Sunday. Prime Minister Boris Johnson set the target of reaching 200,000 tests a day by the end of the month, with aides later saying it was an operational target for Britain to have the capacity to do that number of tests. The Philippines on Sunday reported 862 additional coronavirus cases and 7 more deaths from the respiratory disease. Thailand's parliament passed a $58 billion economic support package on Sunday to ease the impact of the coronavirus. And Thailand reported 4 new coronavirus cases on Sunday. Now, the country confirmed 3,081 cases and 57 deaths since the outbreak began in January. In the meantime, the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, NCDC, has announced 553 new cases of coronavirus in Nigeria. A breakdown shows that Lagos has 378, while the FCT has 52, and Delta State has 23, Edo has 22, Rivers 14, and Ogun State 13. Other figures shows that Kaduna has 12, and Kano 9, Borno has 7, Katsina 6, Jigawa 5, Oyo 5, Yobe has 3, while Plateau had 3, and Osun State 1. The total number of confirmed cases of COVID-19 stands at 9,855, while the discharged cases are 2,856. We also have 273 deaths recorded so far. You're still watching the news on NT International. Time now to go for a break. The news continues in just a moment. Stay with us.
We have observed the lockdown. We have practiced the measures in order to curb the spread of the virus. But we can do better. The coronavirus spread is increasing daily, and only together can we cut down the numbers and defeat the spread of the virus. Remember, COVID-19 is not a death sentence, and a recovered patient cannot spread the disease. Do not stigmatize. Do not hesitate to report any case, or if you have come in contact with anybody that has been infected with COVID-19. If you have cough and fever, please stay at home and call your state hotline. Find state numbers at www.covid19.ncdc.gov.ng. Remember, it is for your own good and for the good of every Nigerian. Let us do better and defeat the virus. Together, we can do this. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest television network.
Glad to have you back on the news. Now, since the advent of the President Muhammadu Buhari administration 5 years ago, the nation has made much progress in several areas. One of the sectors which Nigerians identified as having recorded success is in the fight against corruption and efforts to promote transparency among Nigerians. Olabode Arewa reports.
It will be complete without mentioning the many anti-corruption trials involving notable personalities. In 2015, for example, the $2.1 billion arms deal was exposed following the interim committee report on arms procurement, which indicted former National Security Advisor Colonel Sambo Dasuki. This led to his arrest and prosecution, along with the founder of Dar Communications PLC, Chief Raymond Dokpesi, former Governor of Sokoto State, Atayeru Bafarawa, and the former Minister of State for Finance, Bashir Yuguda. Of note also were the convictions recorded by the EFCC and the ICPC against former PDP Publicity Secretary, Olisa Metu, along with ex-governors Joshua Dariye and Jolly Yame. The EFCC has recovered 794 billion naira between 2015 and 2019. The ICPC, on its part, is intensifying the scrutiny of the personnel costs of ministries, departments, and agencies, has yielded more than 41 billion naira in recoveries from inflated personnel budgets.
Corruption is not a good thing because all of us, we are going to survive it. And how do you fight it is individual discipline. You know that this thing is not good. You don't do it.
The ICPC and the EFCC combined recovered over 113 billion naira. In the last 1 year, the EFCC on its part secured the conviction of 1,270 persons. The success of the anti-corruption fight is also evident in the return to Nigeria of $311 million Abacha loot. The current administration has taken further steps to promote transparency, with the current advocacy for states, local governments and communities to own the initiative and take the message of transparency to all nooks and crannies of the country. In Abuja, Olabode Arewa, NTA News.
All right, also joining me for an appraisal of the anti-corruption fight in Nigeria in the last 5 years is Professor Yemi Akinseye George, SAN. He is a legal practitioner, a consultant, and teaches law at the Faculty of Law, Nasarawa State University, KEFI. Many thanks for joining us, Prof.
Thank you.
All right, so from a professional standpoint, how would you appraise the onslaught on corruption up to now?
Thank you very much for this question. Corruption remains a big barrier to social and economic development of our country. Although significant progress has been made in tackling this challenge, there is still much room for improvement in the fight against corruption. There's no doubt that the anti-corruption agencies, the EFCC, the ICPC, which are the agencies primarily engaged in the fight against corruption, there's no doubt that they have made significant achievements in the last few years. We have moved away from the situation of impunity, which was the situation under the previous administration, where corruption was taken to the level of, an official, where corruption became the official mode of operation. However, now there is significant fear of consequences. People are beginning to recognize the fact that it's no longer business as usual. So to that extent, we have made some progress.
Now you talked about consequences.
But there's still much more room for improvement, yes.
Now you've talked about consequences, really. Would you say that an anti-corruption culture has been entrenched or is still evolving?
Oh, definitely. An anti-corruption culture is still in its infancy. It's beginning to evolve. There are cases that we can refer to as evidence of this beginning progress in the evolution of anti-corruption culture. I would cite, for example, the fact that the president has made it clear that corruption is an existential issue. In other words, corruption, if it's not tackled, can bring about it can kill the country. That is the word used, So, and again, you find that people are beginning to take the anti-corruption agencies seriously. We read recently that the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria recognized the chairman of EFCC by conferring on him a prestigious merit award for his commitment, and his fervency in the fight against corruption. We also read recently in the news that an operative of the EFCC rejected a bribe to the tune of about 100 million offered by some Chinese. And we saw this on TV. So gradually, Nigeria is evolving. The culture of anti-corruption is evolving. But we must not be deceived. The greatest source of corruption in Nigeria is our politics. Political corruption is there. And that has been a huge challenge for the anti-corruption agencies.
Okay,
yes.
So I must ask this question just before we let you go. The worry has been looking beyond. When can we have a feel of total eradication, that if it's possible, of corruption, not just in Nigeria, but in the African continent?
I think it would be an illusion to think that corruption can be eradicated. Just as the crime cannot be eradicated, But what's important is that we need to strengthen our institutions. We need to strengthen our mechanisms for preventing corruption and then for detecting corruption. We need to build, greater revulsion, on the part of the public so that the public will own the fight against corruption, so that corruption becomes the exception and not the rule. That's what we should be talking about. In fact, somebody has said we may even need to reframe the whole fight so that it's not just about fighting corruption, but it's about struggling for accountability. Because we need accountability, and the search for accountability is an endless search. So it's not about eradicating corruption, but it's about strengthening the system to prevent corruption, to detect corruption, and to punish corruption. It's a lifelong, it's a continuous struggle. Even the advanced societies still have issues with corruption, maybe on a more sophisticated level, maybe using different tactics and approaches. So it's not about eradicating corruption, but it's about getting the public, getting the political elite, the ruling elite, creating a greater consensus that corruption can destroy our country, so that we can all work together, to fight this scourge, rather than leaving the fight to the anti-corruption bodies, EFCC, ICPC all alone. It should be an all of society fight. And until then, we cannot talk about a very strong culture of anti-corruption in the country.
All right, thank you very much. We've been speaking with Professor Yemi Akinseye George. He's a legal practitioner, SAN. He's a legal practitioner and a consultant, teaches law at the Nasarawa State Faculty of Law. We thank you very much for being with us. Moving on now, Borussia earned all 3 points at home in Sunday's Bundesliga clash against Union Berlin with a 4-1 victory. And meanwhile, sports authorities around the world are making arrangements for gradual return to competitive sports, as Amazi Marcos reports.